Welcome to Life in the Music Business, a masterclass with Professor Pooch and your host, BACEFACE.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to Life in the Music Business with Professor Pooch. Pooch, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing typical organized chaos, except sometimes it gets unorganized and I have to deal with it, you know.
Of course, it's tough to always be able to be on
But
schedule.
but the thing is, it's great when there's chaos because it's not boring, and boring is the worst type of thing to go through if you're a creative person. Because I see a lot of creative people, they'll create positive things, but they'll also create unpositive, non-positive things. Like, oh, what am I going to do about this? They get into start focusing on the problem instead of the solution.
Start worrying about everything, and I mean, it's crazy. But I mean, the chaos is even good on my end too. I've been working a lot, doing a lot of different sessions, and working with artists, so it's been keeping me busy at the same time.
When you do a combination of basically you engineer, you produce, you do everything.
Yeah, I do a lot of different things. The other day, I was actually working on a song with one of my artists. We were doing like an orchestral arrangement where I was composing everything. And then I actually was crazy. I had somebody else come in later on that night to do a similar thing for a song that they were working on. So I've been doing a lot of orchestral work recently.
Well, it's good you have that skill to be able to do things like that. But
Yeah.
you know what that brings up what you're talking about. In the old days, when I first started, you had record companies, publishing companies, everything was separated. And, you would get the song from the publishing company for the artist. I was one of the first, I wrote my own stuff. But, I'm just past that thing where you went through different things. But what started happening, especially now today, is there's one person sitting down and being the songwriter, the arranger, the producer, the engineer, See, because by definition, if we went by definition, a song, if you're a songwriter, is lead, melody, and words. Okay,
Yeah.
And then arranging is what the instruments play, the range, and the tempo, the rhythm, all that kinds of stuff, what the instrumentation does, basically. And the background vocals are considered arrangement, okay? Now, and then there's the producing, which the producer of music is equal to a director of a movie. They guide the whole process. Normally, I mean, nowadays you'll just have people, it'll be split into two, where one's doing the tracks, which is mostly arranging, really. If they mix it down to two tracks, they're also partly producing it, okay? Everything's changed,
Yeah.
I mean, engineering, I even found it with myself because I had a mini studio here. And I'd sit at my workstation and I'm writing, arranging, producing, engineering all at once.
It's crazy. It's a different world nowadays, especially like, well, everything you're saying, like that's how I act in this case. Like I do so many things from graphic design to website design to writing code to making productions from scratch to composing. I mean, I've
But I
learned
think
so many
that's
things over the years.
I think that's really interesting when you can do multiple things, Instead of just doing the same thing over and over again. Yeah, you might love to do it, but there's nothing like a little variety.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I honestly never get bored, and I always have money coming from somewhere.
Yeah, and that's what counts. Back to that, everybody remember MSI, multiple sources of income. That's, you have income coming from doing different kinds of things. And figuring out how to charge for them drives people crazy. How do you charge for this? And it's not easy for me to figure it out either to tell people, but what I usually state is, well, how much is it? How much do you charge for an hour? Now the songwriting, that's separate, that's covered separately. But when you're arranging instruments and producing, it's time. Time is money. Any business person will tell you that. Time is money.
Of course, it's a super important. Being able to value your time is what I found super important. I mean, to bring it into an interesting topic, I mean, I've met people that have won 10 Grammys that are doing this or doing that and have worked with all these artists and are charging like $50 an hour. And I mean, to me, that is just absurd. It's just like people are undermining themselves by not really charging the real money. And even out in New York, I've seen people with the same credits charging $30 an hour. And
Wow.
that to me blows my mind, because I'm used to 75 to 150 an hour rates. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's what, but part of that is this virus stuff, and they're just lucky to get work. I even know for myself, and I'm rather inexpensive for all the stuff I do, which guiding careers and handling contracts and stuff. But there's a lot of people that aren't working. They don't have money. Yeah, and I'll work things out with them. But I lowered the prices of my books and courses. Because I want them to be educated. At the
Yeah.
same point, what people forget is pooches have to eat. But I'm going to teach you one lesson that I found out. I never figured out why, but it always happens this way. If you do things for nothing for people, then the only people that will come to you are people expecting you to do something for nothing. I haven't figured out how that works. It's something has to do with the universe and vibrations and frequencies and all kinds of stuff.
Craziness.
People.
I mean, I've seen that correlation too, because I mean, there's people that I've worked with that have no problem paying me whatever it is an hour. You know what I mean? I don't know if I should be talking about rates, but I mean, anything that I feel that makes me want to get up in the morning. You know what I mean? That's how I usually establish my rates. Like, what would I be comfortable doing? I mean, and some people, the other people have money, all the money in the world, and won't even be able to pay a fraction of that. Don't want to, at least.
Well, see, my thing is, it's very important to me for everybody to be protected. That's my big thing. So they're safe and nobody's going to steal their stuff. So I admit that I have a sliding scale of prices. Obviously, well-known companies and stuff and lawyers and stuff come to me. I'm going to charge them more than I'm going to charge somebody just starting out. I mean, it makes sense to me.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and it works better in the long run, because if you just have, I've seen people that just put their rates on their website, and those rates apply to everything. And that could be even limiting in a way, and you could be losing out on money because you can't generalize rates, just like we couldn't generalize the third step of your program, because there's so many factors involved. And is the same thing that you were saying. If a major label is coming to me and wants production, my rate doubles automatically.
Yeah, and the thing is, see, but part of what you do is you could charge for different things. You could charge for your engineering per hour, and you could charge for your producing per hour if you're the producer. So
Exactly.
they're two different things, and it can add up, and maybe give a 2-for-1 sale or something.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. And that's what kind of drives me crazy sometimes, because like I see so many credited people that are like, actually just credited people are just normal engineers and stuff. I hear the biggest complaint I hear all the time is, oh, there's no work. I can't work. I can't do this and I can't do that. But I will be the first one to go on record saying that this entire time through quarantine and through everything in the last 3-4 years, I've made my living off of music, just based on my principles and everything that I've learned to be able to actually deal with customers and make sure people are satisfied with their product.
And what helps to me is some people are approachable. It's their personalities. One of the things I talk about in my books and stuff is, in choosing a studio, you have to feel comfortable there. I've come to studios where I just didn't feel comfortable and I couldn't record there. And a lot that has to do with, the studios are one thing, it's the people in the studios. Maybe they aren't my type of people.
Yeah.
There's different things that are going to attract and repel people. You know what I mean? We read into it. Oh, I can tell you multiple stories about, just not feeling comfortable working with the people you're working with. And my thing is, when you're working with an engineer, you're working right alongside of them. If I was the producer or the artist, right, I got to feel comfortable and know we're talking the same language. You know what I mean?
That's one of the biggest things I see, because a lot of people don't understand that. And I've heard horror stories of artists in the studio that just weren't vibing and the whole situation broke out. But I feel like if you're able to deal with people, then you'll be able to make it in any business, especially music business, being that it's all network based and word of mouth.
Well, and also, I follow one of my, it's kind of like a universal rule. I like to give more in benefits and value than I receive in cash money. You know, you got to make room for something to have, you know, give some good out to receive some good, you know, more good back. You're making room and stuff for this.
Of course.
And it's super important because I've left dealing with certain companies just in regular business stuff because their customer service stunk. You know what I mean? If it really sucks, where I can't deal with people, they're being really weird and, oh man, you know, my thing is customer service is very important. And if you give your all, and you have also another benefit that a lot of people in studios don't have, and that is you actually know how to play instruments.
Of course.
So you can think like strings. You can think like you can play guitar. You can play piano. You know, I mean, a lot of the people are just using computers.
Yeah.
And when they see somebody that can do this extra stuff, you know what I mean? It used to help me out. I mean, the funny part is, couple funny stories, but the main one is when I had my studio here, I worked on an emulator too. It was one of the first music workstations. It was a sound sampler, and then I MIDI'd up, you know, communicated with different synthesizers and stuff. Yeah. And now I could play the piano, but I would never hire me. Okay, I could play it okay, but the great thing about with MIDI and with sequencers and stuff like that, you could play sections at a time. Okay. And that people thought, wow, boy, can you play piano? You want to go on tour with me? I said, no way, I'll never pull off a song all the way from beginning to end. And I'm just wondering, they sold my fancy equipment and just wanted me because the equipment looked cool.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I mean, I've been playing instruments my whole life, but the one of the interesting facts that you'll find out about me is that like there's not one instrument that I'm a master of. Like I've never I've mastered my production, my engineering, and a lot of other things. But when it comes to my instruments, I was never like a Eddie Van Halen prodigy. My ability to have the understanding of the piano would help me be able to understand what each person in the band or orchestra or anything are supposed to be doing note wise. So I hear a lot of the things and I can just write it out. And it kind of just works itself out at the end of the day, even though I can't play all these instruments that well. So
yeah, but see, you said something very important that I try to bring up to people. Okay, you're one person sitting behind a computer, or you might have a little, you know, MIDI keyboard or whatever you're using or whatever. When you do a bass part, you got to think like a bass player, okay? At least somewhat. And then some people, you know, they'll play a trumpet and I'll say, wait a minute, a real trumpet can't reach that note, you know? And, you know, some people don't care. Who cares? It sounds good.
And that actually is an interesting point too, because understanding the timbre and the range of the instruments, you know what the limitations are, because obviously, like you said, a trumpet's going to be more towards a higher register, but then a bass is going to be towards a lower register, and then you have the piano that's kind of in the middle, and then the strings are kind of higher. So it's like you could do it depends on what you want to get out of it. But the way I usually approach production is kind of like what I feel is missing, and I usually combine 3, 4, 5 sounds to create a texture of one main thing. So my main piano for my beat or my song may sound like it's 1, but it's really 6 or 7 or whatever I felt fit at that moment for that production.
What that reminds me of is one of my, you know, it was, I used an emulator too, which was a sound sampler. Now, all it held in those days, this is from instrument from 1985, okay? Mm-hmm. It held as a sampler, it could hold 16 and a half seconds. That was its maximum, okay? And everything on a disc was a sample, real instrument. And my trumpet sounded great because you hit one key and it was 7 trumpets. And that was great, except that because of all this memory kind of stuff, it could only play for a few seconds, so I couldn't like sustain something.
Oh man, that's horrifying.
Yeah, but you know, it was really great. And I guess there must be machinery that can do it now, or people can figure it out. If you want to figure it out, I'm sure you can figure it out. Is say I wanted background vocals. Okay, try to get the perfect background vocals each time around. Depends on the artist and if they can do it, and background vocalists, etc. But what we would do is if you get it right once, and let's say it's three-part harmony, dum dum dum, and you might have a major, whatever the thing is, three-part harmony. It sounds really good. What I would do is take it from the tape, put it back in the sampler, and you can make my sampler what is known as non-transpose. So like most keyboards go up a scale, da 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 da, I could make the emulator go da 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 da, all the same note. So what I could do is, if the first chorus I might have, I wanted 6 voices, I would hit 2 keys, but you couldn't hit them straight on, or you have phasing problems. You would like roll your fist, like drum. And you have 6 voices. If I wanted 12 voices, I had to hit 4 keys. but it was neat because it sounded like kind of chorused, natural, without digitally chorusing and stuff.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, there's so many production techniques and stuff. I mean, there's so many sources of information that you can even go like mix with the masters. You can go check them out and see what goes into the most popular mixes. They have the top engineers from the game, and you can go there and learn and be able to pick up different tips and tricks from all different people. And that's what I've been doing for a while. But that's just like a side note for people. But at the same time, when you go and you see these major productions and these major songs that won 10-time platinum, diamond records, and all these incredible achievements, it's so simple in the production and the arrangement, and everything is so straightforward to the point where it's bite-sized for people. And that's what I feel like is a criteria for a hit song, is just being remembered.
There's a saying, simplicity is genius. It's easier to write complicated things than it is to have the simple things where it's just each note really means a lot in the place where it is. You know what I mean? The simpler, and you need spacing. Some people cover up everything. One of the best lessons I learned, and God, I try to bring this up to people because I'll get so many, obviously with clients and stuff, will send me stuff. And especially for step 3, where we have to listen to the songs and, work it out specifically, But what'll happen is I'll hear the songs and everything is up front, rolled together. And I love how engineers say, well, we'll fix it in mastering. You can't fix it in mastering if you can't reach in and pull each instrument and put it where you want it to go. Otherwise, all they can do is slam it upwards, okay?
Of course.
But I learned from Bruce Swedian. This goes back, the way I learned was funny because I was actually online in 1985. There was no internet. It was online. It was dial up, and it was a trip. But you can get these bulletin boards. And Bruce Swedian was on this network I was on. It was called PAN, Professional Artist Network. And he explained it to me beautiful. Now, Bruce Swedian, if you don't know the name, won
Look him up.
awards and everything. He did Michael Jackson's multi-million seller, kind of thing. He showed me a beautiful thing that was so simple. Now, look. Let's say you're looking at me and what do you see? I'm on stage now. Picture a stage. And what do you see? Up front, you see the artist. It could be a singer or rapper. Right behind them is usually the bass drum. Okay, so the separation in tones there right away. Now, let's look at the drummer. The bass drum might be here. The snare might be here. The hi-hat might be here. The toms could be around, and you got to paint that picture. Maybe the bass player is to your left. It's my left, and back 3 feet, and the guitar player could be way back here, and you got to paint that depth. And people, they put everything up front. But what they don't understand is if you know how to do depth by using reverb and EQ and things like that to make it stand out. I mean, I hear so many things where everything's run together and the voice is mixed up in it. And of course, you can raise it to ridiculous amounts, but it's still not going to be clear because the frequencies are getting in the road. If you know how to do it right, your instruments can be blasting and the voice can be real low, but be perfectly crystally clear.
Exactly.
It's just how you mix it. You need to know about panning, yes, but you also need to know about depth. You can't have everything up front because that's not real, folks. You want to listen to, hopefully hit decent speakers and, and sit back and like you're watching somebody on a stage. And that was one of the best lessons I've ever learned. It was so simple, but then I had a picture, oh yeah, the hat's over here a little. I'm going to pan this just a little over here for the hat and the snare might be here or whatever,
Yeah, Bruce Swedien is a genius. I mean, for everybody that don't know Bruce Swedien, he was Quincy Jones' right-hand man. I mean, he used to read all of Quincy Jones' score and engineer all of Michael Jackson's records. And I mean, he that guy's a wealth of knowledge. So it's just one Pooch knowing him is just incredible in that fact, and even a lesson by him.
The funniest thing he told me. Now picture this: you've never been an engineer in a major studio before. His first engineering job was with Quincy in the '58 or something like that. I forget, and he had to do the whole Duke Ellington orchestra.
Oh my Lord!
Oh, by the way, one of the interesting things back then, and because when I went to music college, I was taught by Harry Skeets Marsh, who traveled around. He played for Duke Ellington when Duke Ellington went overseas because the American drummer he used wouldn't go across. But would you believe that if you were the drummer for Duke Ellington, your part was written out for you? The drummers had to read sheet music.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's an incredible thing, especially nowadays, that being a thing of the past.
Oh man, it's just, he told me stories, I learned a lot from him just with the stories, there's nothing like real experience. It's neat having a teacher who was teaching me, how to play this and that, and, but the stories and stuff like that. And oh boy.
Crazy. I mean, that's an important thing, being able to put everything in its own pocket. And that's another thing I see is a lot of people, especially from we can talk from multiple aspects, but I mean overall, like from the beat productions to the full songs, everything is just so generic. Nobody's really trying to really push the envelope. Everybody's just trying to get it loud. And that's the thing, is that when you listen to a Bruce Swedien mix, you can hear everything so perfect and clear, and it's like everything is put in a place for a specific reason. I mean, one fraction off could change the entire mix.
And the frequencies, and people don't understand that when you do a mix. Okay, you might have 4 or 5 instruments, whatever it's like. Look, I want to change this just a hair, a little more on the guitar. Well, once you change one little thing, it changes the whole mix. You only got these 2 channels, folks. You're mixing down the stereo, and you change one little thing, it could change everything. And people forget things like to put all this reverb on this instrument, reverb on that. Reverb is cumulative. It can all of a sudden sound like, like you're underwater or something.
Of course.
And a lot of people, well, I know very few people that like their own voices and stuff, and they'll try to cover their voices up. Folks, watch the TV and films when there's placements, they're placing their songs and stuff. You notice how you can understand the words? I mean, it's very important for TV and film because they have to match it to a script.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's lots of things to think about in this whole thing. And this is all about production and stuff. We started off with talking about prices, and we're going into the whole thing, but it's such a gigantic subject and needs to be covered.
Yeah, of course. And I feel like another thing that we could talk about as well is like what to expect, like what you should be looking for when you go to a studio. I mean, automatically, off the bat, you need to be treated with professionalism and being able to have somebody there that you can work with. But then at the same time, when you're leaving the studio, you need to make sure that you also get your files with you, make sure you have a hard drive, because most of the time I've seen people's careers end because the studio had deleted their work.
Oh boy, yeah, or the computer crashed because they didn't back it up.
Or the
Let's take it a stage at a time. You said, first of all, what are you looking for in a studio? Let's start walking into a studio. I look for three things, okay? One, can they give you what you need? Now, that sound-wise, equipment-wise, whatever. My thing is, listen to some of the stuff they've done and make sure it's in somewhat in your style. Now, keep in mind, don't go by the artist. They might have been a screwy artist or a screwy producer, but can they give you the general overall sound you're looking for? The second thing we touched on already, are you comfortable working in that studio? The vibe's good. It's important, believe it or not. And the third, can you afford them? So there's three major things there. But yeah, oh, you mentioned a very important thing. And that is, folks, if you look, whoever pays for a session owns the recording. And anybody that does not go in, it pays to pay on time or in advance, whatever you have to do if you trust the studio. Take a USB drive in there, and after every session, get all the files, the rough mixes, the stems. Stems are each individual track, you know, the hi-hat, everything. Each individual track in waveform, okay? That's the main one. And you want everything because their computer could break. We've had problems with this. I mean, I co-run the Philadelphia recording community. And it's a large community of a ton of engineers and studio owners and producers, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the major problems we were bringing up, because one of the artists got on there and was complaining, man, they lost my, my thing, like you said, they lost my sessions and stuff like that. Oh my God,
Yeah.
and man, no excuse. And if I was a studio, I'd say, you must bring in a hard drive and you pay for it. You must have a copy when you leave it, or put it on, one of the clouds, the drop cloud.
Dropbox and Google Drive.
Cloud,
Those would be
Dropbox, yeah. Mixing up the two drop
yeah.
cloud.
Yeah, it's super important though. And I mean, one thing that they always say about the industry, or say in the industry rather, is that 3 is 2, 2 is 1, and 1 is none. So always imagine that when you're worried about your backups and your music and your career. If you don't have at least 2 backups, then you're basically irrelevant. You know what I mean? You can't really that you need to be able to be in this industry. You need to make sure that you can, keep your files secure. And the only way to do that is to have it in multiple places.
Just have them with you all the time, and anyhow, you might not like what was being done there and you might want to take those files someplace else to finish. That can happen too, and maybe the studio is concerned about that.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's super important with the files. And by the way, I always, on one of my Facebook sites is Poochcast, facebook.com/Poochcast, POOCHCAST. And on it, every couple months, I put up a notice saying, did you remember to back up your hard drives on your computer? And do you remember the last time you did it? And if you can't remember the last time you did it, it's been too long, because hard drives die, okay? I've been around for a while, but I've had 3 hard drives die on me. Now, one thing I also do, and you could do if you want, I don't know if you can even do it with laptops. I use a desktop with a monster kind of tower, okay? Excuse me. But I don't use 1 drive in my computers. I use 2. 1 for the programs and 1 for my files. But I can also, if it's real important, I'll back it up to the other drive, as well as back it up to the cloud, as well as back it up to I have a 2 terabyte. They make them now, and they're not expensive at all anymore. 2 terabyte USB drive. And, it's just super important. Because hard drives die. They really do. You think
Yeah, they do. And it's super important to make sure you have that stuff backed up. And that's the other thing is like mistreating them. Like you can't drop them on the floor, kick them, run them over with your car because people forget
Oh,
that the hard drives nowadays, there's two types of hard drives. One is the mechanical drive where there's a disk in the drive and it's spinning at 3,900 reps per second or per minute RPMs. And that's how it's read. So when you drop it, then that could fall out of its place, and then all of a sudden the hard drive is rendered useless unless you pay absurd amount of money to be able to go see if you can get it fixed. And then the other type of hard drive is a solid state drive. And even to this day, I'm still a little weary about them because if those things die, they die for good, and there's no coming back. At least if a mechanical drive, it dies, it'll cough a little bit, but you take it to somebody else, and they'll be able to revive it.
well, you know when drives are going to die, usually you hear click, 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 click,
Or
click.
in my experience, or they start acting real slow and they start your computer starts freezing up.
Oh, yeah. Okay. But mine, I heard, click, click, click.
Yeah, of course. And believe
Oh,
me, I'll
God.
be the first one to say that I've lost so many drives in the process of doing music. It's unbelievable. Like I even had, I recently over quarantine, I bought 2 hard drives. I bought a 4 terabyte and a 5 terabyte. My
Wow.
4 terabyte, I had plugged in and then I tried to eject it and I guess didn't eject fully. And when I unplugged it from my Mac, it automatically only would be recognizable on Windows. So automatically all the storage that I had on the 4 terabyte was basically gone. So I had to go plug it into a Windows computer and try to get it all back, and I got it back. But either way, I mean, it goes to show. I mean, I've had drives fail on me, and they were brand new. So you always have to be careful, make sure you have backups, and never trust it as the end all be all.
What it reminds me of back when we were talking about 85, 84. I owned one of the first external hard drives. Now, the computers in those days did not have internal hard drives. They didn't have hard drives. Everything was on a floppy disk. And just to show you, you could buy what did I buy? A 2 terabyte for, I don't know, 90 or 100, I don't remember. And back then, I got a 20 megabyte hard drive for $750. It was a box like this long, this wide, okay? And it was named after different Star Trek things. But yeah, mine was Warp 9 Technologies. That's right. And I had some kind of thing. But now, how could you figure out 20 megabytes, which is like nothing nowadays? Because back then, it was just text. And very rough paintings. Forget songs, forget films, forget videos and stuff. But I was able to do some work with my emulator 2 from it, but it didn't hold much at all, and the quality. All I had to do was make it work enough so that the emulator could save it to its disk that could hold more. But oh man, the memories to some of that stuff, geez.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, some of the newer laptops and stuff, you're not really able to upgrade anymore. That's why personally I always have used a older MacBook Pro. So the one I'm using right now is a 2015, but before that I was using a 2011 for about 5 years. So a lot of people think they need to spend a lot of money to be able to get something good, but I mean, there's no point. The way I see it, the way I can explain to people the best is like, why buy a brand new laptop for $3,000 when it has when you can go back 2, 3, 4, 5 years and get something that was the top of the line at that moment for half the price or even a third of the price? And to me, it's always better because then it comes with the more ports and stuff that I need to use to make music on a daily basis.
Well, it's still like I still use Windows 7. Windows 10's been out for a while, but Windows 7 works. And I'm comfortable with it. And a lot of problems with the engineers are having with the Philadelphia recording community and our website and stuff. A lot of the problems they're having is, Mac might go to the next browser or whatever they're using, a software system, and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And the plugins aren't working to the Pro Tools or whatever. And I keep hearing complaints after complaints, man, if you're comfortable with something and it gives you what you want and need, back to the studio thing, that's what counts.
Of course. And I believe me, the same thing that you're talking about right now, I just went through with my laptop because I upgraded from a 500 gig hard drive to a terabyte. So it automatically upgraded me to Catalina, and I had problems with Pro Tools that I use all the time, with Ableton I use all the time, with all of my video production stuff. I mean, it caused so much chaos in my life, and I didn't even know what to do. So I had to go take it to my dad, who's been in computers for 30 years, and luckily he was able to help me out.
Hey, you're lucky. I use my son normally. No, Jonathan, help, you know. I mean, he builds my computers. People say, God, that's a big tower. Who made that? I said, you know, what's the brand? I don't know. It's my son. He said, Dad, you need this. Dad, you need that. You know, I explained what I needed. I'm going video. I need to be able to do the major video programs and the audio programs, like, you know, great sound card. I said, okay. And he just, we built it, well, he built it, but, and it's been working. That's,
Yeah, that's all you need.
Crossed.
Yeah, you don't really need much to be able to make music. I mean, even a $300 laptop will get you farther than the majority of the stuff you could pay for. So
Well,
a majority of the stuff I always hear excuses, but there's always another way.
well, what you just said is important, is that, a $300 or whatever like that. The point is, first of all, if you don't have a great song, it doesn't matter how much you spend on a thing. And if you don't know how to engineer and don't know how to produce, it doesn't matter if you spend $100 or 10 grand, The point, you need to just, kind of give you what you want and need, and you know how to work it. That's what counts.
Of course. And you don't need much. And that's the thing. It's like, but everything that I've seen the best engineers in the game, they all use stock Pro Tools plugins. I mean, it's lighter. The cool thing about Pro Tools is that when you use the stock plugins, it's lighter on the DSP power, and it frees up a lot of space on your computer. In other words, so that one, you can get a great sound, and two, it's universal for other engineers. So if anything were to happen and somebody else is supposed to mix the song, say like I finished the mix, but I'm giving it to Manny Marroquin to like finish it off, and then give it to Chris Garinger to do the mastering or whatever along those lines. If I have all these exquisite plugins that are one of a kind, then now that engineer that is receiving that project also has to deal with those problems. So the easiest way to do that is to use the stock plugins, because there's so many companies out there that are charging the top dollar for plugins that you can never sell. Most of the people don't even have. And I mean, it's just simpler that way. Just keep everything stock. You don't need anything crazy. You don't need millions of dollars of plugins. You just need a computer and either Pro Tools, Ableton, or whatever works for you.
Yeah. You remind me of, God, there was so many years, like through the 70s, 80s, 90s, when I was recording. Every studio would compete with the next studio on the newest equipment. And now that could be a Neve board and an SSL, and you had the latest of the latest. And they spent most of their money on just trying to make the customers happy. It's to me, it's bull.
Yeah. It doesn't make a difference. I mean, like I'm not gonna lie. So when you're dealing with microphones and you have preamps for those microphones, I mean, those are super important. That, and then your audio interface. I mean,
I agree.
Those are the three most important things, because you could be on a $500,000 board, but if you don't know how to use it, you're not going to be able to get the sound out of it. You know what I mean? Like, there's some benefits to it, but at the end of the day, if you have a good microphone, a good preamp, and a good audio interface, and good speakers, then you can get a good mix anywhere.
Oh, and the microphones, God, that's important. I've seen things messed up from two ways with vocals. One, it's a microphone that doesn't work for your voice. And two, putting too many effects on it, and a lot of vocalists don't like their own voice. I mentioned way back. And, they'll put all this reverb and stuff, man, but it just, after a while, the cumulative reverb just really gets to you by that point.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, you have to be careful with everything that you do. You never want to overdo anything. I mean, I have a different, more of an unorthodox approach to mixing than most people, but
hey, if it works for you, it works for you, and your clients are happy. That's all that matters. I mean, I break every rule. I mean, when I was engineering, I break rules the way I play guitar. If somebody was trained, I taught myself, somebody was trained to say, boy, you hit a D chord funny, you know. That's the way I
Doesn't
figured
matter.
it out at the time.
Exactly. Doesn't matter at all. It's like you said, what works for you is what works for you, and nobody else can say anything about it.
Hey, if it works, it works. That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key. Oh boy,
So,
talking
yeah.
about we started with producing and we got into all this kinds of stuff, but it's all important stuff for everybody to know about. And there's so many people that want to become, you know, producers and engineers and stuff. And what's been funny, it's even for the last 10, even 15 years ago, where since then, a lot of managers look to sign not just artists, but they look to sign producers.
I've seen that
And
recently too.
it's a lot of it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's more and more now. But I remember back even 15 years ago, they were signing, you know, managers were signing producers. And then let the producers deal with the damn artists, you know, as
Yeah,
they
of course.
let
Of course. Yeah.
them deal with the
From the
damn
studio
artists.
and try to make something happen.
You know.
Like catch 22, you know.
Well, no, there's a lot of producers. I'm in a couple situations now that producers want me to help them with, you know, I don't manage. I'll guide your manager. Okay, that's fine. So as long as you're happy with the manager person and just need my advice once in a while. But it's just very important. You know, a lot of producers just don't want to do the business. And I understand that. You know, there's a lot of artists don't want to do the business, but make sure whoever you're with, that manager or whatever, you know, you can trust them that they're looking out for you in your best interest, not their best interest. Okay.
And that's the biggest problem. I mean, like there was I mean, this is probably good, something good to end off with, but we even Kanye has even been going out on a limb talking about how the labels are taking advantage of artists. And one of the top producers, Hit Boy, was sitting there talking about how he was in the worst publishing, like he referred to it as the worst publishing contract in history. And he had 3 different attorneys had read the contract and told him that, and he had signed it when he had first started, so he didn't know. And he's been
They see the money advances. And I'll tell you an example of why this could have happened. They'll see, well, you know, just to start out, and maybe 75,000 sounds really good to you. This was offered to a producer I was representing, and I shut it down right away. It said, here's $75,000 if you sign this contract. But what it was actually saying, if you read the whole contract, they were going to give you like 10,000 now. And the way to get the rest of the 65 or whatever, my math, $65,000, you had to put out 10 songs. But it also stated you have to put out 10 songs as the artist. And he wasn't the artist. He was a producer. So he wouldn't have seen that money if the other people, and maybe he didn't want to be an artist. You know, you have to read the contracts or come to me or an entertainment attorney that really knows the music industry.
exactly
Because they see these big numbers. Artists see these. What was that young kid group that they were offered $4 million to sign, and they ended up with, I think, $20,000 to split between the 3 guys. You know, folks, it's not always the amount of money, it's how you get the money and actually, if you actually receive it, because that $4 million might just cover your recording things. And they say, okay, that money goes to your recording thing. And if there's any money left over, you can have some of that, you know. And then they set it up where they pay this producer $150,000 a song they pick from. And all of a sudden there's like $20,000 left.
Yeah. It's so funny. And people think that when they get $1 million or $2 million, say you already get $2 million right off the bat, right? And say you have people that helped you get through that. So people think automatically, oh, I signed a $2 million deal, I get $2 million. No. So right off the bat, you have to pay off the your manager 20%. Boom, 200,000 gone. All right.
That's off the gross. The manager is off the gross. I mean, it's off the top.
Of course.
And then there's the remaining money to go from. Yeah, you're right. They're paying different people, but a lot of times it's the recording cost. You want a separate recording fund from your personal advance, and that will solve some of it. And it's not the amount of money, it's how you're giving the money. And it doesn't matter if they give you $10 gazillion if they don't do any promotion.
Exactly. Because I mean, you can get it. You can go sign a $1 million deal, and you may be lucky to come home with 250,000. And if you had been told originally that you were signing a deal for 250,000, you'd be like, "Oh man, I'm not going to do that." Well, because they say it's a million, and then you don't account to in your brain, you're like, "Wow, this person, this person, this person are going to eat from me." And then now, because I made this much money, I made $1 million or 700,000 afterwards. Now you're at the highest tax bracket, one of the highest that they can be. So that's almost 50% of your money going to taxes. From your 700,000, you have 350,000, and you didn't even buy a car or your house for your mom or a house for yourself yet.
What's the old joke? It's a true story that Will Smith, out of his first paycheck in the 80s when he was out there, and Will Smith bought 13 cars. At the end of the month, he didn't have enough money to put gas in the cars.
Wow.
True story. But yeah, it's not the money thing. People look at money and they don't understand how much they're really getting. This money stuff, don't sign something until you really check out how much money you really get. I know what I was going to say. There's ways to solve that where you only end up with the 250,000. And that is you put other things so that as your contract is going on, the money keeps adding up. So what you can do, let's say you end up with that 250,000, but maybe they're given so much for the first album, but the second album, say you get another 50% raise in advance. And then a third album, another 50% advance. And you know what the funny part is? The record companies will say, okay, you know why? Because they can drop you anytime they want to. If they don't think you're worth that 50,000, they're going to drop you. And if they think you are, they're going to give it to you. Another way to raise money, I mean, I use this when I, negotiate for clients and stuff, is the amount of songs streamed, sold, whatever. So if you get so much, 50% of the digital thing, but if it goes over like 100 million or 1 million sold, or so, I'm just making up numbers now, 1 million sold or whatever, then it goes to 55%. And the record companies are going to say, okay, but you got to ask for it beforehand.
Yeah.
Because then they can just drop you. If you ask for something down the road when you're already signed, they might say, okay, but they're going to want something in return you might not want to give it up.
Of course, especially, or they might just say okay and just blow you off. I mean, there's so many people that are going back, so many artists that are trying to go back and buy their masters because they finally smartened up and they had the right people around them to explain what had happened to them in the first place. But the thing that we always come back to, and the thing that is the most important, is to be preventative and to actually to secure yourself before you go out there. Like if I didn't meet Pooch 2 years ago, and say I was working, making music, doing whatever, blah, blah, 2 years ago, and I had released a song that hit 5 million listens on Spotify, I would have had no idea and no idea where my money would be coming from. But because of Pooch and him being able to help me and set me up, and I have my own business, my own publishing company, and be able to understand where I'm getting paid. Now, if I were to put a song out and it made 1 million streams or whatever, I would actually be getting paid the money that I deserve to be getting paid. It's a lot easier to get it, but a lot easier to be preventative and get the whole sum of money than to be trying to pick up your coattail from the after.
Well, yeah, but being preventative, there's a word. Preventative is to own your own publishing company. If it goes to somebody else, they're going to take out this and that, and whatever's left trickles down to you. Own your own publishing, at least you get something. Now, the rates still aren't that great with Spotify, but if you get some from Spotify, some from YouTube, some from this, that's why you have the multiple sources of income. Mm-hmm. It adds up, It
does, especially if you work at it.
Yeah, it does take effort. It takes talent, but it takes effort.
So, yeah.
And I think we've totally run out of time.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely were over, but you know what? It was an important conversation. We jumped a lot today, but I felt that we touched a lot of topics that I feel like were super important.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, folks. Stay tuned for the next episode. Bye-bye.
All right, see you, everyone.
Thanks for watching. Tune in for the next episode.